What's up, y'all?
What's
My
up?
name is Josh, and this is...
And I'm Bree.
Yes, and we are here to have another conversation.
Yes.
Now, if you've watched one of these episodes before, if you haven't watched it before, the reason why we have these conversations is because we would like to just give insight on how we deal with each other relationally and just see if that kind of helps some of the people that are out there. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was important for us.
Well, also, yes to help, but some people just are super curious about what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we thought this would be the most engaging way to just show a little bit of what that looks like.
Yes.
And today we are talking about how do we deal with conflict. You ready for this one, girl? You gonna love me at the end of this, just like before? Shade. How do we deal with conflict? So here's what it's gonna look like. We're gonna share some stories up top, and then at the end we'll kind of give a little bit of application points of what we think will kind of be helpful, and then we'll just kind of go from there. You ready?
Yes.
All right, girl. What you got for us?
Yes. So, something that I've noticed kind of once or twice, a few times, is that sometimes I go in the bathroom and I pull back the curtains in the tub, and I'm like, Joshua has been here.
I have.
And so one day I was like, I've had enough. And I was like, oh. So I went in the living room, and Josh was probably on the couch because he likes the couch.
I do.
He was on the couch, and I said, Joshua, I love you, but next time, can you just clean up the tub when you're finished?
The setup with I love you. But
It works better that way because, well, I'm not going to say that works better for him. I think it works better for me because I don't want no negativity when you're telling me something that I've done. If you start with a little bit of positivity first, then it doesn't sound bad when you say the negative thing.
Yeah. So
Yes.
the we'll call it the bathroom incident, if you would. So living and relating with someone while living with each other, one has to kind of respect spaces, right? So we found ourselves in the situation where I thought it was clean.
Yes. Well, and also in Joshua's defense, sometimes I don't be cleaning the bathroom. Like, let me just, I know. But the times that I do intentionally clean the bathroom, I expect it to be clean when other people use it.
Yes. So I don't know about you guys, but it's just like we realize that there are these little problems that come up within the context of our relationship, right? There's problems like the bathroom, or it can be the dishes, or it can be coming to get the groceries on time, or it can be making the bed. It can be all of these little things. That's just in the context of relationship. But then we see problems all over in life. We see problems all the time. But I think the thing that we realized while being in a relationship was this, that there were problems, but then there were patterns also. Now, one pattern that I've realized that we kind of had, I tend to be a person that loves to go back and forth and debate and just throw out a ton of information and talk about things and let's schedule a meeting on the calendar and we'll talk about it for 3 hours and then we'll feel better about it, right? That's kind of always been the type of person that I've been. But it's been funny because I remember when we first got married, we started these things, just our family meetings, if you would. Remember that?
Yes.
Our family meetings. So we would meet like on a Sunday afternoon after church, Sunday evening, and we would basically we would have conversation about just like, hey, what's coming up, or
budget. We used to do
budget. Yes, we would talk about budget. We would talk about any kind of family things that we had to go over. And Bree, my lovely Bree.
Wait, before you even start, I need you to tell context about how long these meetings began.
So these meetings. So these meetings actually started prior to us getting married. Huh?
Go ahead.
The meeting started prior to us getting married when we would have to plan for the wedding. Fair enough. Mm-hmm. That's when the meeting started. So those meetings tend to be, they started at, we needed at least an hour. They probably went 2 hours sometimes for wedding planning. I think they went like 2 hours or something like that. So when we got into when we got married, I feel like especially in the beginning, there were still a lot of things that needed to be talked about. So I was good with going an hour and a half to 2 hours, and Bree just, you on with it.
I won't say that I was not with it per se. I'm just gonna say that after about 30 minutes, I'm like, okay, this is helpful. And then we get to an hour, I'm like, okay, perfect. This is really helpful. When we hit an hour and a half, I'm like, okay, this is a little redundant. And I can see, like, we stay in the same house. So some conversation, like some things that we were talking about, I was like, you told me that on Tuesday. So why are we talking about it again on Sunday?
And so here's the point. It was, we would have these conversations, and then I would look at Bree, and Bree would just be like,
I be gone. I be tired, y'all. I be tired.
She just looked so drained, and I would just get upset because I'd be like,
He'd be upset.
What's going on? Are you not engaged? Like, am I not saying the right thing?
What I think it is, though, is sometimes when we have these moments, these conversations, and Josh talks, I think sometimes he be really trying to get it into me that I need to understand it, or I don't know it. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I got everything he said. Let's move on to the next topic. And he be trying to, reiterate so I can get it.
Yes, and I think sometimes we go in depth in conversations because I'll like to think for the future. I like to think for the thing, so that it's more in-depth conversations at times, where it's just like you be checked out sometimes. You be checked out.
In all honesty, too, I think I just be tired. Like today was an incident where when we started the conversation, I was like, okay, I'm ready. And then about 15 minutes later, I was like, ooh, I'm a little cold. Ooh, my eyes are closing a little bit. I'm a little tired.
Which brings me exactly to the point that we're trying to make. There seems to be a pattern here of when we engage in a specific type of activity. And not good or bad, no moral claim, not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing, but just we realize that there's some type of pattern here when we engage in specific types of meetings. So I think this is what we learned. We learned in a relationship, we learned there are problems and there are patterns. Right? Fair enough? Mm-hmm. Ooh, she's still a little sensitive about.
Don't you be talking about my patterns? I thought we were talking about both patterns.
I have patterns also.
Oh,
but there
tell them about your patterns.
We realized today that there are problems. We talked about my problem, and we talked about your pattern.
But I thought we were going to talk about your pattern, too.
We don't got time.
I can tell y'all later about his patterns.
So I think that was a concept that I kind of heard from some reading and Henry Cloud, and I just think when I kind of realized that, I thought that was extremely helpful, because at times it was like problems can be solved. Like, problems are like one step away from being solved. It's just a conversation. There's usually not too much that needs to be done when it comes to solving a problem. Like, they're pretty open and shut. But then patterns are something where it's just like you have to take a little bit more time to kind of go through and develop and understand what's kind of going on. So I think we say all this to say this. I think the question that we've got asked from Instagram, and when we kind of pull out the poll of like, what is it that you guys kind of want to know, is how do we deal with conflict? And we realize this. We semi know how we deal with problems, and we have no idea how we deal with patterns. We're not even trying to pretend like we have that figured out.
Like the same Well, I guess maybe before we were married, even in our relationship, well, this is me because I didn't even know that it was defined as patterns. Like, I knew things that constantly kept happening, and I was like, okay, but like, we already had this issue, so why is it popping up again? So, or we already had this conversation, and I thought that we both understood the conversation. But so clearly not. So yeah, I didn't understand the concept of patterns, but now that he mentioned it today, I was just like, oh, okay, like we have a lot of patterns. A lot of patterns.
We have a few patterns.
A lot of patterns.
We have a few patterns.
More than two.
Yeah, of course. For the remaining of the time, I think we want to do this. We want to talk about, in regards to problems, what does it look like practically to address a conflict? How do we deal with conflict? How do we try to address conflict, and what does that look like practically? What we realized was this: there are problems, and then there are patterns, right? So in regards to patterns, we feel like we don't have any real insight that we would like to share about that because we still figuring that out.
We don't know.
We don't know about that. But when it comes to problems, I think we have a few application points that we think might be helpful as far as what we can, how we can practically navigate that, or how you can practically navigate that. So the first point is this: don't forget to bring up the issue. Don't forget to bring up the issue. So I'm going to tell the egg story, okay? So I was at Bree's apartment one day, and I was making eggs for her. And the night before, you can tell that part. Go ahead real quick.
The night before, we were on the phone, and Joshua said, "Can I make eggs for you tomorrow?" Because we were watching church from home. I think he was coming over to fix eggs. And I was like, "Yeah, no, that's cool." And he was like, "How do you like your eggs? Wet or dry?" And I said, "What? What is that?" And he was like, "Wet or dry?" And I was like, "I like them scrambled with cheese."
Yes, but I did say scrambled before wet or dry. We did. We were talking about scrambled eggs. We were talking about scrambled eggs.
Okay, I don't know. I don't remember. All I know is he asked me were they wet or dry, and I said I've never heard that in all my years of living.
Yes. So,
and I've been living for a while.
I get there the next day, and I'm making eggs. So she had no preference. She didn't know what it was. Yeah, she didn't know what it was, so she had no preference. So I go to make the eggs. I don't like my eggs wet. I don't like to throw the eggs on the fryer for 2 seconds and then basically be drinking it. I don't want soup. I want eggs. So I like nice. I like them a little browner. So I like to brown my eggs a little bit. So that's what I did. And then I finished the eggs, and then Bree proceeds to make a comment which says,
"It was a joke." And I said, "I've never had my eggs this dark before."
Yes. So we laugh about it. We laugh. And then after a while, I think I'm sitting down and I just realized, like, I feel like sometimes
he was being a Sour Patch.
No.
You know them Sour Patch candies when they be sweet one minute and then crazy the next minute.
I feel like sometimes Bree would like to throw me some shade.
But he be throwing me shade too.
I feel like sometimes Bree be throwing me some shade. And yeah, so I think I was in my feelings about that. I was just like, I feel like sometimes Bree throws me shade. I feel like she throws me shade. So I was kind of in my feelings about that, but I never the issue was that I felt that way.
Yes.
But the whole time I never really addressed that. We were just talking about what it meant to we were just talking about the eggs and whether or not she liked her eggs.
I thought he was mad about the eggs.
Yeah,
I was mad.
We were talking about eggs, but what the real issue was how I felt and how in moments when she would say offhanded comments, just some comments or whatever the case may be. I don't know, I say, "You're a lovely person. I love you so much." But I think in that moment, I think all of that to say that don't forget when you're in circumstances or you're in issues or you find yourself in conflict. Sometimes we default to what we're feeling and we get and we talk about that part, but then we forget to bring up the issue. So I think the first thing that we've kind of learned in relationship as far as how we deal with conflict is not forgetting to bring up the issue. I think it's important for us to share how we feel about things and how certain things made us feel, but we can't forget to bring up the issue. Point 2.
Yes, point 2 is know when to bring up the issue. So when we were getting engaged, we had a period of, we got engaged on a Friday. I kind of found out that my granddad wasn't doing too well on Friday. And then, so I was overwhelmed with all these emotions from our engagement, but also overwhelmed with emotions from like my granddad and how he was doing. And then the next day, on Saturday, I think it was Saturday, we had like I had like a surprise. Well, we had like a surprise engagement party. So we get there, I get there, and Josh and a bunch of people are there, and we get there, and the first thing I say as a joke, because apparently my jokes don't come off right often, to Joshua, they do to other people sometimes, but I said, like, everyone's like, surprise, and I'm like, oh, no more surprises, and all I do is look at Josh, and the look on his face, he is trying so hard not to be upset.
What?
So then I'm like, conversing with everybody, and I am like just exhausted because the day before was like just a lot for me. And we sit down and we're like ordering food, and Josh is just a little quiet. He doesn't look excited. And I said, well, what's wrong with him? So I politely leaned over and I said, are you okay? Are you upset about something? And Josh said, nope, I'm fine. I said, I know he's not fine. And so then after the engagement party, he told me how he felt. So I think that's probably a good example of when to discuss the issue. But I also am not sure if that's a perfect example because I knew he was mad. I knew he was mad throughout the engagement party.
Yes. So I think what Bria's trying to say is that there is a time and a place to kind of address issues. Yes. I think I've made my fair share of addressing issues at the wrong time. But I think in that circumstance, it was just like, this is probably not the place to address issues. But then you do see sometimes those couples that'll just like, they'll have it out like in front of people. And
and also, I don't think we would, we have not ever had like, knock on wood, like a conversation like that where we're just going back and forth and like yelling at each other. But I say a lot with my face, and Josh says a lot with his demeanor.
That's right. That's right.
My face, even with a mask on, you know how I'm feeling.
So I think you can find this to be true at your jobs. You can find this to be true at school. You can find this to be true everywhere. It's just like finding, you may have a conflict, but how you try to deal with that conflict, it's all about the timing of which you choose to deal with that conflict.
Yes, and I also, real quick, just to go back to the engagement story, after we did talk about it, and he told me how he felt in terms of like, same thing as the story before, like, I've done all these things for you, and I don't really think that you appreciate kind of what I did. I was just like, oh, okay, so my joke was not in the right timing. So it was just better that we talked about it afterwards. So.
Yeah. Nope. I think that's a good point. Which leads us to our final point, which is creating the time to talk about issues. I think sometimes, I think sometimes we naturally just want to be in whatever relationship we find ourselves in, whether it be friendships, whether it be marriages, whether it be
work,
romantic, whether it be work relationships, whatever it is, we want that relationship to be good all the time. Like we don't budget in the time for when it's going to go bad. Like it will inevitably be some type of conflict that we need to deal with, and we don't craft time or space for that sometimes, and it makes it even harder to deal with. So I think a practical thing that we can do is starting to create time for conflict, create time and space for conflict. And I think that's something we try to do. I don't think we have that down pat figured out, but I think that's something, I'm going to say this and you can go. I think that's something that we've tried to do with our Sunday meetings and family meetings, where it's just like we try to craft times and spaces to where we can kind of bring things up. What were you going to say?
Sorry, no, I was just going to say that, like the Sunday meetings. Is where we would talk about the issues. I was good in those moments because it always happened like in the earlier time. It was when after we had those conversations and the budgeting and everything else.
Yeah.
Did I just get tired?
No, I think it's good. Yeah. So I think, to sum up what we kind of went over, don't forget to bring up the issue. Understanding the timing of when to bring up the issue.
Yep.
And
creating
the time and the space to bring up said issues. Any final thoughts?
I just want to say, even with whether it's patterns or problems, I think naturally we're still trying to figure it out. As someone being a 9 on the Enneagram, I am still trying to navigate just what conflict looks like for me, because I just don't like to address it. So, I think there are good points. I think we're still trying to work through it, but also we're two different personalities, and I don't like to be in conflict. I like peace.
Yes.
Sunshine and rainbows. I like a little rain though because it makes me calm.
Yes. No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, learning to lean into conflict. I think that would just be, I think that if we can learn to do that, we will see a lot of our different relationship and friendships and things that we have progress and kind of grow. Because I think through everything that we've gone through, albeit sometimes it feels like we want to knock our heads against the wall, I think we're better for it on the other side.
Yes.
Shade. You see what I'm talking about?
No, I was just saying yes, because I feel like I think we'll grow at it.
Yeah. Cool.
He always trying to say I'm throwing shade.
All right, so that is a wrap for this episode. You did a good job.
That's what he do after he know he throw me shade. He like to throw me compliments.
Thank you so much for watching this episode.